Hi friends, welcome to Loved by Cacao. This is a home for all of us who love cacao, to share our stories, to elevate the voice of cacao through voices from all around the world. Here we will connect the threads of light that cacao is weaving between us, from heart to heart. Thank you for being here. You might like to make yourself a delicious cup of cacao to enjoy while you listen, to tune in with this sacred medicine. I am Pania, lover and facilitator of cacao, and I invite you to step in through the door to this cozy home. Come to sit on a cushion in this circle together, and may we allow ourselves to be here, to be loved by cacao. Welcome to episode 5. What is cacao and why are people into it? I hope that this will be an episode for those who are new to cacao, and perhaps those who are not so new to cacao might also learn something, or this could be an episode that you can send to people in your life who are wanting to learn about cacao. If you don't want to explain it yourself, you can just send them this. This may not be a complete comprehensive deep dive into answering all these questions, because I just want it to be a simple reference, a good basis, and an episode that's easy for you to refer to or share. So I will do my best to be succinct here on these subjects, but the world of cacao is very vast, which is why I started a whole podcast about it. We will make a start on this huge subject anyway, and I really love sharing what cacao is. I feel passionate about people knowing this information because I care about cacao, and so I care for people to understand the differentiations between what are the various types of cacao versus chocolate, etc. Because when we understand where our food and our medicine come from, we have more respect for them and the processes that they go through. And chocolate definitely needs, and cacao need, more understanding and respect in the world. Before I get into it, I'll just share that I am sitting here today with my cacao as usual, my beautiful cup of an orange cacao today, and it's my current favorite cacao drink. It's winter here in New Zealand, and I'm finding this drink really, really good for bringing extra sunshine into my wintry days, and orange is such a gift for that. And of course orange and cacao pair so well together, or orange and chocolate. It's a flavor I've loved for a long time, and funnily enough, a couple of weeks ago, I just randomly woke up in the morning. One morning I woke up with the words orange juice and cacao in my head. And where I'm staying right now, there's a few beautiful orange trees with really nice ripe oranges on them. And I have been eating them a little bit, and I was like, oh, orange juice with cacao. Of course I knew that cacao and orange go well together, but I'd never thought to actually mix the juice. So I've been experimenting a little bit, and I've been blending fresh oranges with my cacao, and it's super yummy. It might not be to everyone's taste because there is a slight sourness to it, and it's quite different than just drinking cacao the way I regularly would. But I'm finding it very, very uplifting and extra nourishing, and just a really lovely way to get a bit of extra vitamin C into my day. And yeah, I love oranges for that feeling of brightness. So experiment if you like. I've tried just blending it with orange peel, and I'm finding that it's nicer with a bit of juice. And I'm actually just using the whole orange. Well, I'm using about half an orange per cup of cacao. And some people might not like the slight pulpiness that results from actually just putting the orange straight into your cacao and blending it up, but I'm enjoying it. And so I'm using about 3 teaspoons of cacao with just a little bit less than half an orange, and a tiny bit of peel, just a really thin strip of peel orange peel and blending that up, and I'm finding that cinnamon and maca and honey is a really beautiful mix with the orange and the cacao. The cinnamon gives it a little bit of spice. The maca seems to kind of like tone down the sourness of the orange and add a bit of malty sweetness. And of course the honey adds some lovely sweetness. So you're bringing the bitterness of the cacao, the sweetness of the honey, and the sourness of the orange. The oranges I'm using are probably a little more sour than shop-bought ones. So you might not need as much sweetener if you have a sweet orange. But yeah, give it a go. It's really enjoyable. I need to go and put it on the Loved by Cacao Instagram page to share the recipe over there. But let me know what you think if you try it. And so that's what I'm enjoying today. And it is a lovely sunny day, and I'm excited to share the subject of what is cacao, because when we know, we have more knowledge to carry us forward and to experiment with using cacao in our lives. So, cacao. A lot of people might say, don't you mean cocoa? Isn't it just chocolate? Chocolate is just chocolate, right? And what do you mean ceremonial cacao? Chocolate as medicine? What are you talking about? And what's the fuss anyway? I've definitely had a few of these questions along the way and had people look at me in confusion when I talk about working with cacao. And since most of us grew up only really knowing chocolate and maybe cocoa, there can be confusion around what is cacao. So, and also you add in cacao beans, cacao nibs, raw cacao, cacao butter. It can get a little confusing. So I'll do my best to cover all of this and clear up the differences. To begin, we first need to understand the source of all these things. We need to know that all of cacao derived things that I've just mentioned begin their life on a tree. Yes, chocolate comes from trees. Cacao is actually a bean that grows on the tree with the Latin name Theobroma cacao, which means food of the gods, a very apt name, and it is indeed a food of the gods. It is also a tree that was named and known and loved many thousands of years before any Europeans came and gave it their own names. So, Cacao or Cacaoatl are two indigenous names that come from Latin America, and there are bound to be many, many, many more, because it has a very, very long history, at least 5,000 years, quite likely more. It is a very old tree, which does originate in the Americas. The history of this tree might be for another episode, and even then the history is not totally clear. At least I haven't found it to be clear yet. When I first started researching cacao and learning about it, I was in Guatemala, and my first introduction was the idea that cacao originated in Guatemala and or Mexico with the Mayan and the Aztec people. And I understood that it originated in that part of the world. But on further research, I read that it originated in the Amazon jungles of Ecuador. And then on even further research and listening to various people speak, I have learned that it originated in Peru. Now, I don't know which one of these is the exact truth, and there has been some newer proof that some of the oldest findings of cacao were in Peru. But I'm really not one to say which country it exactly first began in. But we do know that a very long time ago, cacao began its life in Central or South America. And we also know that cacao was very sacred and prized in many of these ancient cultures. The Mayans famously used the cacao bean as a currency. So I like to say money doesn't grow on trees, but cacao does. And they knew that it was precious, and they would make trades with the beans. They would carry them around. The beans can last for a very long time. If they are cared for properly and kept mold free, they can last for years. So the Mayan people knew the heart of cacao, the importance of it, the significance, and the nourishment that it holds. And to them it was like gold. And in more modern times, the big chocolate companies have kind of stolen away the heart of cacao for a time. But the heart is coming back to us. And that's probably another story. So, how is cacao created? The beautiful, beautiful tree. I love the cacao tree very much. I love trees in general, and of course the cacao tree is very special to me. They are absolutely beautiful trees, and I like to remind people that cacao is tree medicine. And cacao is Theobroma cacao or Cacao. These trees are evergreen, and they have large, glossy, shiny leaves. They can grow to usually between 4 to 8 meters, although they can actually get really, really tall, like 12 meters. But they're generally kept shorter on cacao farms for ease of access. And this tree is an understory tree, which means that it needs larger, taller trees to provide shade for it. It does love warm climates, hence growing in the tropics, but it also needs shade rather than direct sunlight. So it doesn't do so well as a monoculture crop. It needs to be in diversity, in community with other plants and other trees. So this beautiful tree sprouts from a bean, the cacao bean, in the forest floor covered in leaves, in this understory, protected by the other trees around it. And this beautiful tree sprouts up towards the sky, and eventually it creates the most amazing fruit pods. And these fruit pods, the cacao fruit, actually bursts out of the tree in tiny little flowers first. And the flowers are very, very small. They look a little bit like mini fuchsia. If you know fuchsia flowers, they look a little bit like fuchsia. They're tiny, tiny wee things, and they're so sweet. Little fairy flowers, I think of them as. And they sprout out straight from the woody parts of the tree. So from the trunk or the branches. And they start out as little tiny, well, first the flower, and then once they've been pollinated, little tiny green pods. And these pods take several months to mature. I think it's around 5 months. And they get quite large, and they can be various different colours. And they look quite funny popping out from the branches and from the trees. And you can find them red, yellow, green, even kind of bluey shades, which is really beautiful, or purpley shades, reddy purple, even orange. So they're quite rainbow coloured. If you were to find all the different colours and put them together, you can have a rainbow of cacao. And if you break open one of those pods, you will find a whole lot of white fleshed covered beans. And it just looks like lots and lots of little rounds of white flesh that pops out of the pod. And each bean is encased in the white flesh. And there's about 30 to 40 beans in a pod. And this beautiful white flesh is actually really delicious. It's a part of cacao that not everyone gets to experience unless you can go and be with the fresh fruit or in a place that sells it. I love fresh cacao fruit. It's got a kind of sweet, tangy flavour, and it makes an incredible juice as well. And this fruit is a real gift. So I'll get to that in a moment, but I just wanted to come back to the flowers for a second because something that we need to appreciate with cacao is in order for the flowers to be pollinated to produce the fruit, we need midges, little tiny flies, which are perfectly designed to fit inside the flower and carry the pollen from flower to flower and pollinate them. And bees are too big to fit in this little flower, and so these little tiny midges do the job for us. So they are something to be grateful for, even though flies are not the most wonderful, beloved insect in the world. We wouldn't have cacao without them. So they do the pollination, this fruit grows and produces this bean. And if you pull out a bean straight from the pod, you eat the white flesh around it, then you can break open the bean, and oftentimes they're bright purple. Different varieties have a different colour. I believe there's white beans as well. I've only seen the purple ones myself, and they're bright, bright purple, which is actually a sign of something being really high in antioxidants. And it's a beautiful colour. And if you are someone who is used to chocolate being a sweet treat, it might come as a little surprise that chocolate actually starts its life being something very, very bitter. So if you eat a raw cacao bean, it is incredibly bitter. I've eaten them, I know. And I don't mind bitter things too much, so I did manage to eat some with the flesh, and it wasn't so bad. But the flesh is better on its own, really, and the beans are much nicer when they've been processed in a way to remove some of the bitterness and bring out the other flavours. So those processes begin with fermenting. The beans need to go through a fermentation process. Actually, first I want to say that there are different types of cacao beans, different varieties, and the most commonly known beans are Forastero, Criollo, and Trinitario. There are actually many, many more varieties than that, but those are the most common in the world, and they are used. The Forastero is probably the most common and is used in the chocolate industry because it is said to carry less disease, and it's a hybrid bean. Criollo is more of an heirloom bean, and Trinitario is a semi-hybrid, I understand. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they have different qualities, and the Criollo is prized as being one of the best. But there's also many other varieties like Chuncho and way more that I don't know the names of, and more are being discovered. And so it's an interesting world in terms of knowing that the chocolate industry only really uses the beans that they consider to be the cheapest and the easiest to use. And so high quality chocolate will use the heirloom varieties, which have better flavors, or maybe not better, but I say better. They have different flavor qualities and different nourishment qualities as well. So coming back to the fermenting, in order to create a delicious cacao or chocolate product, the beans need to go through a fermentation process. Now, whoever figured this out, I am so grateful that they did. Whoever thought to leave the beans to ferment in their fruit and then put them through the next processes, they discovered something amazing. So the fermenting is a really important part of removing some of the bitter flavors and creating a bean that has more nuance to it in terms of flavor. Fermenting is also quite an art, and it needs to be at certain temperatures and for a certain amount of time. And some farmers get really into the art of fermentation. And this is a real process of care. And then also washing the beans after they've fermented and drying them is another real process of care. And if beans don't go through these processes, they won't have the same flavour and nutrition qualities. And some of the cheaper beans are just sold wet and then washed and used straight away rather than going through the fermentation processes. So they need to be really cared for to become a high quality product, and it takes time. And mold can be an issue with cacao as well. So this is something else that ideally the place you're getting cacao from is a place where people are careful not to let their beans get moldy. And once the beans have been fermented and then dried, then they get roasted. And some people do this over a fire, and some do this in a big machine. There's different methods for roasting. And when you roast a dried bean, the shell removes really easily. So the shell kind of loosens from the bean itself, and you can brush it off and blow it off. I've actually got some cacao beans with me right here, and I thought maybe you could listen to the sound of them, the dried beans. So I think they sound quite nice. Probably sound a little bit heavier than the roasted. So those first ones were dried with their shells still on. And these are the roasted ones with no shells. You can hear that they sound lighter. And that was about the same amount of beans. And they taste much nicer once they've been roasted. It's kind of like coffee. You need to roast it to bring out the flavors. It can be, or it used to be, I don't know if it is so much now, but it used to be very trendy to have raw cacao. And when I first started in the cacao world, I was in the whole raw cacao thing, and I've since learned that roasted cacao actually tastes a lot better, and it still maintains the beautiful nourishing qualities. And actually the concept of raw cacao is not really true anyway because of the fermentation process. The cacao reaches temperatures that are higher than what is considered to still be a raw food if you were to be on a raw food diet. So there isn't really such a thing as raw cacao. It's probably more fair to say that it's just unroasted or non-roasted. So what's next? The beans, and then once the beans are roasted, then all sorts of things can be done with them. So one of the simplest things is you might have heard of or eaten cacao nibs. And that is just simply the roasted bean broken up into little pieces. That's all that is. Like, you're actually eating parts of the whole bean when you have cacao nibs. And they do break really easily once they've been roasted. I can break one right now. I just kind of twisted it and it broke into little pieces in my hand. And so cacao nibs, and then the fats and the fibers can be separated to create cocoa and cacao butter. The beans are processed in order to remove the fats from the fibers. And that's how you get cacao powder and cacao butter. And then to make chocolate, cacao powder and cacao butter, or cocoa and cocoa butter, are put through a process to bring them back together. So they're separated and then they're brought back together again in a process called tempering, which melts them very slowly back into each other. And that process of tempering is what creates a really smooth, like melt in your mouth chocolate. And so you end up with something that was a whole bean, but then it was taken apart and put back together again. And cacao paste, which is the same thing as ceremonial cacao in a way, that's what ceremonial cacao comes from. Cacao paste is the whole bean, so it's a whole food. It hasn't been separated and brought back together, it is just the whole bean ground down into a paste. Now, cacao beans are sold all around the world in huge amounts in order to become chocolate and all the different chocolate products that we see in the supermarkets and shops. Unfortunately, the majority of this cacao is unethically farmed and traded. The chocolate industry is kind of a mess, and it's really one that I hope will change in my lifetime. Whereas high quality bean to bar chocolate and medicinal or ceremonial cacao is a much smaller industry, and that is one that I hope will grow in my lifetime. We say that cacao is a plant medicine teacher, and two of the most beautiful things that she teaches us to learn and embody within ourselves are heart integrity and authenticity. And if we want to learn those for ourselves, we must begin by consuming cacao that has also been farmed and processed with integrity and authenticity, without hiding anything or harming anyone. It must have ethical practices for all the people and the plants involved. So this means sustainable farming and fair exchange, fair pay, or better than fair pay ideally, for the farmers. It means that the processing of the beans is done with care and attention, ensuring a quality product. So what is ceremonial cacao? I'll get to that in a minute. But first, the benefits. And the benefits of cacao are kind of akin to the reasons that people are into it, which is what I've said in the name. What is cacao and why are people into it? Well, there's a lot of reasons that people are into it. One is just that they love it, and that's how I started. But also, it's really high in nutrition. Cacao is a superfood. It's incredibly high in antioxidants. It's one of the highest foods on the antioxidant lists. It's very high in minerals. It contains really great minerals like iron, magnesium, potassium, zinc, and probably more. And it's extremely nourishing for the body. And it really is a food. So it can feel very nourishing and filling. Sometimes people find that if they have a decently strong cup of cacao, it can keep you going for quite a while. You don't need to eat a lot of food with it because it's so nourishing. And cacao is famous for being a mood improver. It contains mood enhancing chemicals which release endorphins and make us feel really good. So it can support anxiety and low moods and give a beautiful feeling of well-being. This feeling encourages joy and also creativity. It's also really helpful for focus, for meditation. And it's funny because I was looking at my notes before this and I wanted to write down doing the things we've been putting off, which goes with focus, but I wrote doing no BS we've been putting off, which I think is quite funny because it kind of helps us get past the BS, past the bullshit. It's like if there's a lot of stuff that's causing us to procrastinate or to not do something, I find that having cacao just kind of cuts out all the chatter and all the extra stuff and helps me focus on what it is that I need to do, or brings more joy into a task so that I can just let all the BS go. So So I think it's quite funny that I wrote that down because it's quite true. And a lot of people find that cacao is very supportive for dance and nature connection, body connection, awareness, energy, and also communication. So it can be really helpful in relationship, for connection, communication, and being heart-centered with other people. I feel like I kind of just grazed over the mood enhancing side, which is probably because I never remember all the names of all the different chemicals. I'm not a scientist at all, but it is really, really helpful at enhancing things like serotonin, and I'm sure that we'll talk more about that in the podcast. But for me, that's some of the most beautiful aspects of cacao, because she can really help to bring joy back into our lives if we've had any struggles with anxiety or low moods. And I think that's a really, really beautiful aspect, and I do hope that we'll go deeper into that in other episodes. So they say that cacao is heart-centered. What does that mean? Again, that's a whole other episode, but on a basic level, it actually is a cardiovascular stimulant. So one of the main compounds in cacao is theobromine, like its name, Theobroma cacao. And theobromine is quite different to caffeine. They have some similarities, but mostly theobromine is a cardiovascular stimulant, whereas caffeine is a nervous system stimulant. So caffeine gets you all kind of shaken up and energized and go, and gets the nervous system going. Theobromine gets your circulation going, it gets the blood moving, stimulates your heart literally on a physical level, and also very much on an energetic level. And you don't get the ups and downs that you do with caffeine. So it gives kind of an up feeling at first, and I find it's much more sustained through the day than if I have caffeine. These days I'm very sensitive to caffeine. If I have a coffee, I'll feel like completely high for about 2 hours, and then I'll completely crash. And that's not a good feeling, the crash. So for me, cacao just works so much better. The theobromine, it gives me a beautiful sense of energy and well-being, and I don't have a crash. There are very small amounts of caffeine as well in cacao, and people who are very sensitive to caffeine might feel it, but most people won't probably notice it. And cacao can be an amazing coffee replacement for people who are trying to get away from drinking too much coffee. It does take a little bit of time to acclimatize to the difference because, like I just said, theobromine is different to caffeine, but you get used to the difference and come to love it like I have. So, as I said, some people might be more sensitive, and cacao is not for everyone. Some people actually find it too stimulating, and some people, I have known people over time who find that it just really doesn't work for them on an energetic level or digestive level or whatever it is. It isn't for everybody. So listen to your body. Start with a smaller amount perhaps and build it up. Or if you find you have too much at one point, just try again but with a lower amount and just see what works for you. Cacao also can dehydrate the body a little bit because it makes you pee. It's a diuretic, so it makes you go to the toilet, and that means you need to rehydrate. So when you have cacao, as with coffee or tea, it's really important to make sure you're drinking water as well and looking after your hydration. And in terms of these benefits I just mentioned, that was not a comprehensive list. I'm sure there's many more. But that's a good start, and I really want to say, if you want to receive the full benefits of cacao, make sure that you're taking in a high quality cacao that can actually provide those benefits and real nourishment. And so cacao is known as an ancient plant medicine teacher. Many plants are teachers, which means that they have knowledge to share with us on an energetic level, and cacao is one of these special teachers. Cacao can teach us powerfully and gently over time, and we can develop our own relationship by learning to slow down and listen and tuning in with cacao. And for me, that's really the concept of a cacao ceremony, is just to give yourself the space to tune in with the medicine, to listen to the messages that are coming through, to listen to your body, your heart, yourself. And if we want to have the best experience of doing that, again, we need high quality cacao. So if you want to receive medicine and wisdom, make sure that your cacao is coming from a beautiful source that maintains the integrity of those aspects. The term ceremonial cacao is commonly used to refer to this high quality cacao. And I'm not sure if I was clear before in saying that ceremonial cacao is cacao paste, which is the whole bean ground into a paste. So it's actually a whole food. And this is important too, because in order to receive the whole wisdom, you need the whole food. And when you have cacao powder or cocoa, you're just having the fiber. If you were to eat cacao butter, you're just having the fat. And both of those things contain nourishment and benefit for the body. And cacao butter is a good fat. It's a nourishing fat. And both things are meant to be consumed together. So that's the big difference, one of the big differences. But what actually makes cacao ceremonial? Well, this is kind of a little bit of a controversial topic for some people. And I don't want to say a definitive definition of what it is, because there's different ideas about what it is. But most importantly, it must be 100% pure cacao, and it must be grown with integrity, which means fair trade, beyond fair trade ideally, for the farmers. And I mentioned this earlier, but there must be integrity on all levels, for the bean, for the people, and how it's processed and how it comes to you. And ideally it is ground into a paste and packaged and sent to you with the intention of it being medicinal, being for your benefit, being ceremonial. So we could also say that it is medicinal cacao, or it is 100% pure cacao paste. We don't have to use the term ceremonial, but that's the one that's most commonly used right now. Just make sure that you are getting cacao from people who tell you where it comes from, who know its source, who compensate the farmers well, and take care in the way that they process their cacao. One of my wishes with this podcast is to share the stories of all these different people who are making the highest quality cacao products, so that you can find them more easily and you can hear their stories and feel who you resonate with, so that this can help you find the cacao that you love. And once you've heard their stories, you know that you're getting a quality product if this kind of cacao is something that you want in your life. And I just realized I didn't even mention bean to bar chocolate. That's a beautiful industry too, that is like a sister. I see it as like a sister to cacao, because it's generally very ethical as well. And who doesn't love chocolate? And I like to encourage people, if you're going to enjoy chocolate, do your best to get high quality bean to bar chocolate from people who know where the beans are coming from, because that can really do a lot for the chocolate industry. So the things that bean to bar chocolate and cacao have in common is that the people producing them have a relationship with where the bean comes from, and they produce it with care and love. And it's about the quality of the product and bringing out the beautiful, unique flavors and the nutrition in the product. So I just wanted to pop that in there, because the chocolate industry is a whole thing, but I do love bean to bar chocolate. And for me, I love whole foods, and that's one of the reasons I love cacao. And the main difference is that cacao is the 100% pure bean ground into the paste, whereas chocolate goes through other processes. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It's actually super delicious, as we all know. So where do we need to go next? I think we're coming towards the end, and I do hope that this gives you more of an understanding about cacao. Maybe it sparked something in you, or a desire to learn more or experience more. If it brought up any questions, keep investigating your curiosity. Cacao will bring you what you are seeking, and often it's only through direct experience with cacao that the understanding comes through. And know that you can develop your own relationship with cacao that is unique to you. So whether your reason for following your curiosity is simply to enjoy the health benefits, the superfood benefits, the nourishment, if it's for the mood enhancing or the energy that it gives you, maybe it's just because you love the taste, maybe you're looking for more creative juice, or you want to delve deeper into the more mystical side and develop your own deep listening ceremonial practice with cacao. Whatever it is that you're looking for with cacao, it's up to you, and it's up to you how far down the cacao journey you want to go. So choose the aspects that resonate with you. And for some people, the taste and the feeling is enough. But for others of us, we want to go all in, like myself. So whichever it is for you, whatever you're doing with cacao, please be sure to buy cacao and chocolate that is made with integrity. Please enjoy it. Let it bring joy into your life. And the more that you allow your heart to be opened, the more your heart will open to the medicine of cacao. If you still have questions, feel free to email me. I have the email now, lovedbycacao@gmail.com. I'll put that in the show notes. You can also message on Instagram, lovedbycacao. And also, if you would like some deeper guidance, I offer cacao guidance sessions and one-to-one ceremonies over Zoom, or in person if we happen to be in the same area. So if you have many questions, or you'd like to deepen your experience with cacao, feel free to reach out to me on that email or Instagram, and we can talk. So to close, a big, big, big thank you to our beloved cacao, Mama Cacao, the amazing gift that you are. Thank you for all the wisdom that you bring to the world. And thank you, dear listeners, for listening today. Happy cacao enjoying, and I'm sending you lots of love. Thank you for opening your heart here and listening today. Please subscribe to keep getting episodes in Apple, Spotify or YouTube. And please share this podcast with your cacao-loving friends. You can follow us on Instagram at lovedbycacao. Please take care of your heart and may you feel loved.